Good morning. It's a beautiful day. And those who don't know me, my name is Jeannie, and I'm a storyteller of my life. I support myself by selling doTERRA essential oils, and you can find a link in below. I would like for you to like my videos, share my videos, and subscribe if possible. And I really thank you for your support. Today, I'm talking about my daddy. It's his birthday. He was born September the 7th, 1925. I don't have all that many memories of my dad. A lot of my memories I suppressed. A lot of my memories, I was far away and I wasn't connected to my family. But my daddy was a Native American, and he was an alcoholic, but he overcome that. Many Native Americans are alcoholics. It's because their body wasn't built for alcohol. This was a phenomenon that happened to the Native nations back when they were put on the reservations. It was a way of controlling them. And I guess they didn't know that their genes weren't made for alcohol. But along with my daddy, many Native Americans have overcome their alcohol. My daddy, I believe, was drafted into the U.S. Army in 1943. Give or take, I'm not sure. When he was talking to the recruiter officer, he asked, "What is your occupation?" Okay, I really don't know how true this story is because it was told to me, but it's cute. Anyway, he told the recruiter that he was a crook. So maybe he's trying to get out of the Army. They don't want crooks. I don't know. So they made him a cook. And anyway, the story my father tells is that he drove for General Patton. And on the last day of the war, my father was shot in the leg. He's got a scar on both sides of his leg about this big around, right in the middle of his leg. He said when he woke up, his leg was kind of laying beside him. But anyway, they saved his leg, but he still got an 80% disability. And I went to college, and I was taking a criminology course. So maybe my daddy was a crook, because in this class, the teacher was very arrogant, and I didn't like him, you know. But I knew something that he didn't know, and I didn't tell. So y'all are the first to know, other than my father. He was talking about one of my father's friends who stole the Mansfield Gate. It's a gate that lets the water out, and it's made of copper, and it weighed 1,000 pounds. So anyway, they called my daddy's friend for stealing the gate, but they didn't catch my daddy. And so his friend went to prison, paid the time for stealing the gate, and my father looked over his wife and children until he got out of prison. And I was sitting in class, I'm going, I know who did it, I know. And I went to Austin. I was living in Beaumont, going to college at Lamar University at that time, so I go into Austin to see my dad. I tell my dad, you know, you were in my history class this week. And my daddy just laughed. He says, it's so nice to be part of history. I didn't know it was so famous. They didn't know he wasn't famous. They didn't know who he was. So if that teacher is still teaching, now if he watches my video, he'll know who the accomplice was. So I don't know. I'm just kind of get flustered here. So I have so much, I want to talk about, and I have so little time. There goes my nose again. And anyway, my daddy was my hero. My daddy was my protector. Even though we had hardships, and we weren't together all the time, and I really didn't get to know him in a father family status, because I was in, I was out. And but he never failed me. When I needed him, he was there. One time I was very, very, very sick in New Orleans, and I sent my baby to Texas for someone to help me with her. And so when I got well, I went back to Austin to get my baby. And the man said, "You can't have my baby. This is my baby, and you need to leave. My wife can't have a baby, so we're going to keep yours. It's not your baby anymore." And he picked up his shotgun, and he pointed at Louis, and he shot at him, because Louis had driven me from New Orleans. Louis left. It probably is good that he left me behind, because everything worked out. We both didn't need to die. So anyway, he turns the shotgun on me. He's going to shoot me. I told him, "Shoot me if you must, but I want my baby. I don't want to leave without my baby." And I'm afraid. I don't remember being too afraid, because I told him that you shoot me, you remember, you have to clean me up. Apparently he didn't shoot me. So I don't remember how I got out of the house. I don't remember how I didn't get shot. But I do know that I got to my father, and my father handled the situation immediately. And this man who loved my child with all his heart and soul, and could not live another day without my child in his life, he took my child and he threw her in a mud puddle. Nothing like true love. My baby wasn't hurt, thankfully. Just a little muddy. Anyway, he took care of my daughter, my child, again later on. I don't remember the reason he took care of her again. But when I get to that part of my life and start telling that story, I'll probably remember. But my daddy got cancer. He got lung cancer. And he had tuberculosis. And I went to the hospital to see my dad. And they had him on a ventilator. They had all that stuff on his mouth. He couldn't talk. And the doctor says, as long as he's on the ventilator, he's going to live. And his approximate lifespan on the ventilator is 4 months. Who wants to be laying in a bed for 4 months knowing that you're going to die, and you can't talk to your children and you can't see your grandchildren? My father was very close to his grandchildren, and he was very close to his wife, and he was just a family man. And he's going to lay in this hospital for 4 months, maybe, and die. I asked my father, I said, do you want to go home? I know that if I were going to die, I wouldn't want to die in a hospital. And this is a VA hospital. And veteran hospitals really don't take care of you anyway. And you're so neglected. Even in regular hospitals, when I'm in the hospital, they neglect me. And they tell me I don't hurt when I hurt. And they tell me I don't do this when I do that. So my dad acknowledged to me that he wanted to go home. So I told the doctor that we're taking my dad home. Now, some of my siblings were angry because they didn't want Daddy to go because they didn't want to lose him. Well, I didn't want to lose Daddy either. But I didn't want to see my daddy laying in that bed, not able to communicate and being so miserable. You know, if you're going to be miserable, go home. You know, go home where people love you. So anyway, the doctor says, we're not going to take him back. And he may be dead before you get to the end of the driveway, and we're not going to take him back. I said, fine. We'll take him. We'll take him home. We're taking Daddy home. Daddy was very happy. Lung cancer, tuberculosis, and everything. He lit up his Camel cigarette. And he loved his cornbread and beans. And he had a grandchild on his knee and a big cup of coffee. He was in heaven for 1 week. Then they took him to Breckenridge Hospital, and he died there. But he didn't die in a hospital bed. And he didn't die alone. But anyway, when he came, you know, when I married, my husband kind of cut off my communication from my father because, you know, my father didn't have the prestige that he had. He looked down on my father. And so when I went to the funeral, my husband didn't accompany me. And he said, nobody's going to go to his funeral. He's nobody. My nobody dad. I got to the funeral. The family was fighting. The LDS family wanted to have the LDS funeral, and the Church of Christ family wanted to have a Church of Christ funeral. So my daddy had 2 funerals that day. One was in the church and one was graveside. Well, the one in church, it was a big church, was full. There wasn't very much space left, you know, and there were so many people there. But not as many people were there that should have been there, because that same day, 2 of my father's friends had died, and they were having a funeral on the same day. So anyway, the procession, it was like 4 city blocks long. My daddy wasn't important, was he? And then when we got to the gravesite, there were different people there. Some of the same people came, but most of them, you know, left after the first funeral and didn't go to the graveside funeral. And they did the 21 gun salute for my dad and presented the flag to my stepmother. And then we sang, "I'll fly away, I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away." And as we sang this song, we let 66 balloons go up into the air to fly away with my dad. There was a joyous time in that. The balloons were Anita's ideal. I can't remember Linda very much that day, but Linda never cried. So, I don't know. And then, later on, Betty died. And I went to Betty's funeral. And I always wear a hat. I always had a hat day. If it was a special day, I wore a hat. I kind of broke that habit. I need to get back into my hat days. And anyway, they had the funeral outside, graveside. And I look down, and I'm sitting on my daddy's grave. That upset me immensely. I'm thinking to myself, couldn't they put us somewhere else? How come they had to put us on top of my daddy's grave? But I got over it. And this is when Tommy decided to marry Earl. And I'm going, oh no, you can't marry Earl. No, no, no. And Earl, bless his pea-picking heart, was the best thing that ever happened to Tommy. And anyway, after that, my nephew, John David, shot himself in the head. He died. I was living, that time, I was living in Oklahoma. At the time of the funeral, I was living in Beaumont because I was going to college at Lamar University. But I was strained on money because my Longhorn bull had gotten a bullfight and he lost one of his eyes, and I had to find the money to take him to the doctor. But I was so upset when I went to bed that night because my sister Linda, she needed me. And there was no way that I could get to her. And so my daddy, John David, and my grandmother were standing at the foot of my bed and told me, you don't worry, you're going to go to Linda. And I did. I can't remember what happened, but how I got the money. But usually my daughter always took care of me. So that had to be where the money came from. But I can't remember where it came from. All I knew is the joy of my heart that I got to go to New Orleans to be with my sister. And then one day I was visiting in Austin, and Earl took me to my dad's gravesite. He had the prettiest headstone with the purple heart on it. But I looked around, and I had no respect for the people he was buried beside, the family he was buried with. It's his life, but I had no respect for that family. And I kind of started crying because of where my daddy lay. And then I felt this hand on my shoulder. He said, "Little one, I'm not there. And I'm all right. You be happy." It's like my daddy just took me and hugged me in arms, and he says, "I'm okay. I'm not there in that grave." And I truly believe that if I ever needed my father again in my lifetime, that his spirit would come to me again. I can remember for sure 2 times his spirit came. His spirit came to ensure me that I could take care of my sister Linda, and that he was okay. It didn't matter where his body lay because his spirit was where it was supposed to be. In heaven, my father was awesome. That was a hard story. And I know it didn't make too much sense because I rambled. And I can't do what I want to do because I keep entering the wrong number. One more time. There's a little silence for my father. Try to remember the kind of September when life was slow and oh so mellow. Try to remember the kind of September when grass was green and oh so mellow. Oh, vision my father fishing by the river. Such a perfect day. Try to remember the kind of September when you were a tender and gallow fellow. Try to remember, and if you remember, then follow, follow. There's no one weeping except the willow. Try to remember the kind of September, then follow, follow. Deep in December, it's nice to remember, although you know the snows will follow. Try deep in December, it's nice to remember the fire of September that made us mellow. Deep in our hearts, deep in December, our hearts will remember, then follow, follow. I'll never get charged with doing a copyright. God bless. I love you.